to Bad at Goodbyes. Each week on our show, we spotlight species from the IUCN Critically Endangered Red List. These are plants and animals with decreasing populations, nearing the edges of extinction. And so we'll share species research, information, and conservation proposals. And then we'll spend part of the show opening a space for contemplation and awe. We'll perform a soundscape of gentleness, of delight, and perhaps of grieving. Without conservation activity and significant societal shift, many of these species may not survive the 21st century. And so perhaps we might acknowledge their journey with a moment of our attention, a recognition of our kinship, with a commitment to personal and systemic change. Thank you for listening. On today's show, we consider the Bahamian Hutia. The Bahamian Hutia is a critically endangered mammal, a rodent native to the Bahamas archipelago in the Caribbean region in the Atlantic Ocean. Its scientific name is Geocapromys ingrahami, and it was first described in 1891. The Bahamian Hutia is a small to medium-sized rodent, weighing about 1.5 pounds and measuring about a foot in body length, with a short 2-inch tail. They are covered in a fine, soft fur, ranging in color from grayish, brownish, reddish to black. Their undersides are paler, a creamy tan color. They look perhaps like a mix between a gerbil and a large mouse, with a compact, sturdy, somewhat rounded body. They move low to the ground, with 4 short, strong limbs, each with 5-toed feet, and the digits ending in sharp, curved claws. Their hind limbs are longer and stronger than their forelimbs, and they will sit upright on their backsides and their hind limbs. Their forelimbs are particularly dexterous, adept at manipulating food. And the soles of their feet are rough, fleshy pads for traction in navigating uneven and slippery surfaces. They have a squat, rounded muzzle with large dark eyes, small arched ears, and fine whiskers at the end of their snout. The Bahamian Hutia is nocturnal, emerging and active from dusk until mid-morning, like roughly 10 a.m., and then daytime is spent at rest in small caves and crevices, or sheltered under leaf litter or in dense vegetation. This behavior, remaining inactive during the sunlit hours, is to minimize heat stress during the hottest parts of the day, as opposed to predator avoidance. In fact, in its natural habitat, the Bahamian Hutia does not have any natural predators. Lack of predator threat may, in part, explain their generally gregarious social behavior. Bahamian Hutia live in highly dense colonies, sharing feeding sites and their caves and hollows with very rare aggressive altercation. Colonies have been observed to have high site fidelity, so groups repeatedly returning to the same locations, but low territoriality. They do not defend their territory with threatening behavior or violence. Even interactions between different colonies who may have overlapping home ranges are peaceful. Distinct colonies will feed in the same area without altercation. And within the colonies, there do not seem to be hierarchies of dominance, like divisions of leader and follower. In their restricted habitat, they live on a very small island, the Hutia have adopted cooperative and tolerant behaviors as opposed to competitive, violent behaviors. This social cohesion is maintained through a variety of communication strategies. Researchers describe nearly constant soft vocalizations, little chirps, whistles, low grunts, and quiet chortles when the Hutia forage together. Physical touch is frequent, so mutual grooming and playful, non-aggressive wrestling are used to maintain social bonds. And they use olfactory communication. The Bahamian Hutia scent mark locations with their urine, but unlike many mammals that use scent as a warning or to define territorial boundaries, the Hutia employ this olfactory signaling to recognize group members and demarcate communal spaces. Colonies consist of multiple intergenerational family units, and the Bahamian Hutia form long-term and possibly lifelong pair bonds. Mating takes place throughout the year. There does not seem to be a peak mating season. And then after mating, mothers gestate their young for about 4 to 5 months and generally give birth to just a single offspring. The pups are born precocial, already covered in fur, with eyes open, able to consume solid food within a day or two, and they only nurse for about 2 months. That said, the young stay with their family group for 2+ years, learning to forage, developing their communication skills, and integrating into the social structure. We have some evidence of communal rearing and caretaking. Researchers describe a scenario in which they captured a young hutia to tag and track it. Throughout that process, the pup vocalized a distress call, a sharp squeak, which drew a crowd of adult hutia, more individuals than would be in a single family group. So these are other unrelated adults drawn to the research site, the adults gathering and vocalizing in defensive response until the pup was safely released. Pups reach reproductive maturity at 2 years of age. And the Bahamian Hutia have an average lifespan of roughly 6 years in the wild, though have been documented living as long as 9 years in captivity. In the dream, a dream for my species. May we, humankind, share our territories without threat or violence. May we act peaceably when our home ranges overlap. May we disband hierarchies of dominance. May we reject territoriality. May we adopt cooperation and tolerance, not competition and brutality. May we gather to protect our young and the young of our neighbors. In the dream. Bahamian Hutia are herbivores, foraging for leaves, shoots, fruit, nuts, and bark. Their diet includes more than 40 plant species, including wild dilly, pigeon plum, prickly ash, sea lavender, and sweet potato. Foraging mainly on the ground, they will stand on their hind limbs to reach leaves and even climb small distances up into shrubs and trees to reach fruits, bark, and new shoots at the tips of higher branches. The Bahamian Hutia have specialized adaptations for their very dry habitat. They have a much lower metabolic rate as compared to other rodent of similar size, and can regulate their metabolism, slowing it down when water is scarce. in general, they are able to meet their drinking water needs entirely through feeding, making efficient use of the water content in the vegetation they consume. They are even able to survive drinking seawater, salt water, for up to about a week. These are vital adaptations for their arid habitat. The Bahamian Hutia is native to the Caribbean region, to the Bahamas, to East Plana Key, a limestone and coral island near the southeast tip of the Bahamas archipelago. East Plana Key is roughly 5 miles long and a quarter-mile wide, a total area of roughly 1.5 square miles. It's small. And it's remote. A thin strip of relatively barren, low-lying stone with 20 plus miles across the open Atlantic to the nearest other island. The landscape is fairly desolate. A thin layer of sandy soil covers rough, weathered slabs of limestone, pocked with fissures, craters, crevices, and small caves. Vegetation is salt tolerant and drought resistant, adapted for this semi-arid environment of nutrient-poor soil, high winds, and salt spray. So these are low-growing shrubs, cactus, sparse stands of short palm and small buttonwood trees. The only fresh water is temporary, collected in craters and crevices after rainfall. The climate is subtropical and relatively consistent year-round. Temperatures average in the upper 70s Fahrenheit across the year, with summer highs cresting in the low 90s and winter lows falling to the mid-60s. Annual rainfall is fairly low, averaging about 35 inches per year, and falling in short, infrequent bursts, quick storms as weather systems pass through to the wider ocean. There are few other animals on the island. The only other inhabitants are bats, lizards, and seabirds who will visit, though few nest there. Importantly, there is no, nor has there ever been, regular human settlement on the island. The Bahamian Hutia shares its island home with 7-ear apple, southern Bahamas anole, white-tailed tropic bird, silver thatch palm, wild papaya, Audubon shearwater, sea oats, East Plana curlytail, bridled tern, buttonwood, hog cabbage palm, sooty tern, wild dilly, firebrush, Florida privet, railroad vine, American flamingo, golden creeper, swordbush, central Bahamas geckolet, sea grape, great blue heron, coastal ragweed, pigeon plum, bay cedar, osprey, and many, many more. Once widespread all across the Bahamas, the fossil record shows significant decline in the Bahamian Hutia population upon the arrival of European colonizers in the 1500s and 1600s. This is specifically due to habitat destruction, land clearance for agriculture. And additionally, the invasive introduction of European mammals. Rats, mice, cats, and dogs impacted Hutia populations across the archipelago. Two subspecies, the greater Abco Hutia and the Crooked Island Hutia, were driven to extinction roughly 300 to 400 years ago. And in fact, our Bahamian Hutia was believed to be extinct until the 1960s, when the population on East Planet Key was rediscovered. That remote, uninhabited location vital to their continued survival. Today, the species is threatened by stochastic events. These are unpredictable occurrences, like a particularly severe hurricane, which could devastate the remaining population in a single catastrophic occurrence. And they're threatened by anthropogenic climate change. Human-induced climate change resulting from persistent over-reliance on fossil fuel burning is resulting in sea level rise that is and will increasingly affect the low-lying Bahamian Keys. These islands are threatened by saltwater intrusion, which would inundate the freshwater vegetation that the Bahamian Hutia feeds upon. And climate change is increasing the frequency and severity of extreme weather, and so increasing the likelihood of stochastic events. Fortunately, the Bahamian Hutia has been legally protected by the Bahamian Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries since their rediscovery in the 1960s. In the late 60s, a translocation program introduced the species to two other remote islands with similar habitats within the protected Exuma Keys Land and Sea Park on Warderick Wells Key and Little Wax Key. Though, as of 2011, few, if any, of the Little Wax Key population remain. In 2018, a small captive breeding population was established at the Ardastra Gardens Zoo and Conservation Center in Nassau, Bahamas, to secure a stable, genetically diverse population for research and for public education. Most recently, a 2025 research project is studying the feasibility of additional local breeding and reintroduction programs. Nevertheless, the Bahamian Hutia has been considered critically endangered on the IUCN Red List since 2024, and their population is currently in decline. Our most recent counts, which are very rough and some of which are 40 plus years old, estimate that less than 15,000 Bahamian Hutia remain in the wild. Information for today's show about the Bahamian Hutia was compiled from the Bulletin of the American Museum of Natural History, Volume 3, Number 23, from Conservation Biology, Volume 5, from the IUCN, from Natural History, Volume 82, Number 6, from Oryx, Volume 10, Number 2, from Biological Conservation, Volume 10, Number 1, from Kevin Clark Jordan's doctoral dissertation at the University of Florida, from the Southeastern Bahamas Coral Reef and Island Survey, from the Species Conservation Fund, from PLOS 1, Volume 14, Number 9, from Environmental Archaeology, Volume 24, Number 2, from Scientific Reports, Volume 10, from Judith Reebach's doctoral dissertation at the University of Rhode Island, from the Journal of Mammalogy, Volume 98, Number 4, and from the Handbook of the Mammals of the World, Volume 6. For more information about Bahamian Hutia conservation, please see the Bahamas National Trust at bnt.bs. So now I would like to improvise some music, in hopes of making space to be in contemplation of the other beings with whom we share our fragile earth, like the Bahamian Hutia. I do not intend to force meaning upon or extract meaning from the Bahamian Hutia. Instead, I want this music to simply express my awe for all life. And so I will pause in this space of sound and reflection, and I warmly invite you to join me. honor the life force of the Bahamian Hutia, I will commit its name to my record. I am so grateful to have shared time on our planet with this lovely, tender being. And I lament the ways in which I and my species have harmed and diminished this species. I grieve. So in the name of the Bahamian Hutia, I pledge to reduce my consumption, my carbon footprint, and my wastefulness. I pledge to acknowledge and attempt to address the costs of my actions and inactions. I pledge to resist the harm of plant and animal kin and their habitats by individuals, corporations, and governments. I forever pledge my song to the witness and memory of all life, to a broad celebration of biodiversity, and to the total liberation of all beings. This has been Bad at Goodbyes. Thank you for listening. Until next time, let's take care of each other and all of our kin.